We are going to make sure that we are on page 12 and you see a Native American girl there. After you've read the passage to yourself, then you can come back and read along with me. Native Americans were the first people to live in North America. There were many different tribes of Native Americans that live in our country. All of the tribes were different. They wore different clothes, had different hairstyles, and built many different types of houses depending on where they lived. So it's kind of like our community. They had different types of different tribes, so different groups of Native Americans. And just like we have different like schools we go to, we have different groups too, and we all wear different clothes. Some Native American tribes would build teepees because these were easy to move as they traveled. Other tribes built houses that would last longer with materials such as wood, clay, vines, grass, and bark. These types of housing materials depended on the climate of the area. The different tribes also spoke different languages. There are still about 3 million Native Americans living in North America today. List 3 things you know about Native Americans. So 3 things that you learned up here. Write them in complete sentences with a capital letter and a period, and then read back over them to make sure that it makes sense. Now we're going to do the main idea, so what the story was mostly about, and then 3 details, so what goes along with the main idea that was mentioned. And on the back page, write an F if the statement is a fact. Write an O if the statement is opinion. So if it is something that we can prove, it's a fact. If it's just something that someone thinks, but it might not be something you can prove or something that everybody thinks, then you put an O for opinion. Native Americans lived in many different types of houses. If that's a fact, if that's something that was in the story and we can prove it, put an F. If it's not, put an O for opinion. Native Americans are very smart. So did the story say anything about all Native Americans being very smart? If it did, put an F. If it didn't, put an O for opinion. Native American homes are not very comfortable. If you think that's a fact from the story, you're going to put F or O for opinion. And last, there are about 3 million Native Americans living in North America today. F or O. For our vocabulary focus, make a list of the materials that were used to build Native American homes. So you're going to make a list, just like your mom or your dad would make a grocery list. It needs to be up and down like that, of materials that were used to build Native American homes. You can look back in the text if you need to. And we have another text to self. What do you think it would have been like to, let's start over. What do you think it would have been like to have been some of the first people to live in North America? So think about our great big United States of America and think if your little group of people were the only ones on the land. What would that be like? Write a couple sentences on the line below.